Look at this, you guys. It's the Sometimes vlog. It's a vlog that happens sometimes. 20 seconds from now, it will be exactly 1:18 a.m. in the morning, and we are back here at the Twin Pines Mall. 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Look at that. All these crazy humans are taking their picture in front of the Twin Pines Mall sign. I'm photobombing now. Yay! 1:16 a.m. in the morning, Twin Pines Mall. I photobombed one photo. I don't need to keep photobombing them. Look at that. Oh, that was video. 1:16 a.m. Look at this poor guy. He was here too. I'm documenting him being in there. 1:16 a.m. at the Puente Hills Mall here in the City of Industry, California. A couple days ago, Adam the Woo and I were here. We ran all over this mall. We talked all about how Back to the Future was filmed here. If Twin Pines Mall sounds familiar, and look down here at that. Do you see that right there? 1:16 a.m. was the time on the sign in the movie when Marty McFly comes down here, cruises down, and peeps over down at the Twin Pines Mall where he's supposed to meet Dr. Emmett Brown. 1:16 a.m. read that sign. 1:16 a.m. reads this prop sign that wasn't working the other day when we were out here, but is now since working, as you just saw. There's no time to keep talking about that sign. As cool as it is, and as awesome of a moment as that was, we were standing where Marty stood at 1:16 a.m. October 26th, 1985. This is now October 26th, 2015. So exactly 30 years after the events of the movie, if they were historical, which for the sake of our purposes, I'm just going to talk as if they were historical. 30 years ago to the day, Marty McFly would have stood up there at 1:16 a.m., looked down here. Of course, Doc brings the DeLorean out, then he hops out of it. I'm going to get out of the way. The guy that owns this DeLorean time machine, just soak this in. Soak this in. He's taking photos of his car at the precise time. Doc pops out of here and says, "Stand in the parking lot of the Twin Pines Mall, 1:18 a.m. So that will be the next landmark. It is 1:18 a.m. now. Doc Brown is getting out of there. He's talking to Marty. Marty's filming him. It's 1:18 a.m. And then, of course, at 1:20 a.m., at 1:20 a.m. is temporal experiment number 1. Do you remember temporal experiment number 1? Okay. In the movie Back to the Future, Dr. Emmett L. Brown, is explaining the time machine to Marty. He then puts Einstein, his dog, in the car with a stopwatch and then remote control, uses a remote control, and drives the DeLorean back over to that sign, that big tall light pole right there, which is F1. The sign on the light pole says F1. He backs them way up over there. Then they race towards us right over here where Marty and Doc Brown are standing. Basically, actually, they're standing right about here, right where we're standing now. And at 1:20 a.m. exactly, almost exactly, I can't remember the exact seconds right now. At 11 seconds, maybe, I can't remember. Bam! Einstein goes into the future. Doc, you disintegrated Einstein! No! I sent him into the future. 1 minute into the future. And then he's explaining, about the DeLorean. The way I see it, if you're going to build a time machine, why not do it with some style? Besides, the stainless steel construction, look out! Pushes Marty out of the way. And then in comes Einstein exactly 1 minute to the future. Look at his watch is exactly 1 minute behind, mine is still ticking. So that happens at 1:20 a.m. and then when they come back, Einstein's watch says 1:20 a.m. still. Doc says 1:21 a.m. I think that's how it works. Confusing. It's 1 in the morning, guys. And there you go. So look what's happening here. Tonight, October 25th, 2015, they screened Back to the Future, the first movie, in this parking lot. They did a screening of the movie. 5 years ago, they did the same thing for the 25th anniversary of Back to the Future, the We're Going Back event. They screened the movie in this parking lot. They did a little reenactment where they drove a DeLorean through here. They had a van come down there and be the Libyans and do all this stuff. And this whole parking lot was packed with people. I was here 5 years ago for that first 25th anniversary screening of Back to the Future. And of course, tonight they did it for the 50th anniversry, or 50th, excuse me, 5 years later, it would be 50, haha. No, 5 years later, they did it for the 30th anniversary of Back to the Future. So October 25th, which is the day Back to the Future starts. So in Back to the Future, when it starts, and it's early in the morning in Marty's and Doc's house, it's October 25th. And then that night, October 26th, 1:16 a.m., Marty comes in. So you want to get really nerdy? Let's get nerdy. You want to get nerdy? Let's get nerdy. Psh. which, you know, so there you go. Look at this. So it's actual Back to the Future Day, guys. I know everyone's excited about October 21st, 2015. That is the day that Marty and Doc went to the future in Back to the Future Part 2. I get that. We were over here the other night before that happened, getting all excited and kind of celebrating Back to the Future Day before Back to the Future Day. But this, my friends, is actual Back to the Future Day. Everybody wants the car. I know you all want to see the car. You want me to get close to the car. But this gentleman here who owns the car is taking photographs of his car with the Dr. E. Brown Enterprises 24-hour scientific services truck. These guys over here have a camera drone. It's all kinds of crazy stuff happening. So they did another screening, a 30th anniversary screening. Look at that, of Back to the Future here tonight. I wasn't able to make it for that. I did it last time. I sat in the cold parking lot and watched Back to the Future. It was very exciting, very cool. So I already kind of lived that experience. I didn't really want to do it twice, but of course I knew all night. I knew, and everyone was like, "Why didn't you do a vlog? Yeah, why didn't you do this?" I know my Back to the Future people. I know Back to the Future fans very, very well, and I knew that if I came out here at 1:16 a.m., I knew they would not have gotten rid of this truck, and I knew they would not have gotten rid of this car, because it's now October 26, 2015, exactly 30 years after the events of the movie. And there you go. This is what's happening. So right now, let's see. It is now 1:22 in the morning, so while we were talking, it was the anniversary of Temporal Experiment number 1. I can't remember the exact time Marty goes back to Marty goes back to 1955, but it's only minutes afterwards, about 1:26 or 1:28 a.m. I think. And so right now we're doing it. We're standing in the parking lot of Twin Pines Mall, 1:18 a.m. We're experiencing Back to the Future 30 years after the events. I can't remember exactly what time Marty goes back to 1955, but we just missed Temporal Experiment number 1 right here, the 30th anniversary, where it happened. Temporal Experiment number 1. Oh my goodness. It's a very handsome automobile you have there, sir. Can I ask you a question? Do you know offhand, what time does Marty go back to 1955? Is it 1:26, 1:28 a.m.? I can't remember. We're seconds away from that time. I don't remember when it was. Nobody remembers when it was. He has a DeLorean. I was concentrating on getting his photos. I don't want to bother him, but I thought a man who owns a car like that might know what time. Everyone's probably very tired because there's a long, crazy Back to the Future event here. You can see all these people picking up the trash, crazy amounts of trash still in the parking lot, and it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. So this is pretty cool. So this is what I like. I like coming out here when there's nobody usually out here and enjoying Back to the Future moments by myself. I've been to almost every single filming location, every practical filming location that you can get to from all 3 movies multiple times. I used to have an old Back to the Future filming locations website. I sort of rebuilt the website because a bunch of people looked this up after I talked about it the other day. I rebuilt the website. I was about halfway through rebuilding it, and I went, you know what? I'm doing all these Random Land videos, I'm doing all this other stuff, and I don't have time for this. Nobody wanted to take it over, nobody wanted to help with it, nobody wanted to go through this vast archive of stuff I had and then kind of redo a dynamic website and do all this stuff, so it kind of got abandoned halfway through rebuilding it. So most of the information isn't on it anymore, and it's just sort of humbuged and left to rot. But for years and years and years, I tracked down all the filming locations from Back to the Future, and I had this printable map of exactly the route that Marty and the Libyans took, which I used during Google Earth. I did all this crazy nerdy work for it, and people used to come out here and send me pictures. Before social media, people used to send all their pictures to me by email, like, look at this, look at this, look at this, look at this crazy stuff. And once the era of social media came, and people sort of took all the information from all the locations that I had hunted down so carefully over all the years and just sort of posted it anywhere, willy-nilly, however. See, now that he's not back with his tripod, I'll get a little closer. I didn't want to get in the way and heimbuck this gentleman's photos of his car. Look at that. Isn't that amazing? Pretty cool. Stand at the parking lot of Twin Pines Mall, 1:18 a.m. So let's see. Now 1:25 a.m. I'm pretty sure when Marty went back to 1955, it was 1:26 a.m. But I could be wrong. I feel like the people that would know are probably all up there taking pictures with the sign. The ones that were counting down to 1:16 a.m. But maybe they were so excited getting the 1:16 a.m. pictures that they've forgotten. I don't know. I don't know what they're having. Oh, see, they have a Jurassic Jeep over here. So the other night when we were out here, we had the Pizza Planet truck, and now there's one of the Jurassic Jeeps. There's quite a few of these in Southern California. I think there's a cast member at Disneyland who has one, because I see it at the Red Robin all the time. Someone has a Jurassic Jeep right over here, which is a 1992, should be a 1992 Jeep Sahara, converted into a Jurassic Park Jeep. Pretty awesome. I would love to own one of those. I would love to own any movie car, except for maybe like the Mystery Machine. I wasn't a huge Scooby-Doo fan. Casual fan. Goals would be Jurassic Jeep, probably on the bottom, or Explorer. You know, the Jurassic Explorer, probably cheaper to make, I'm gonna guess. And then maybe above that would be, I don't know, some of the Batmobiles are obviously amazing. 1966 Batmobile is probably the top. DeLorean Time Machine probably right underneath that. Maybe Jurassic Jeep under that. I don't know. What would you choose if you could choose any movie car? Wouldn't that be amazing? To have a movie car. The problem is, we were talking to our friend Andrew that had his DeLorean out here the other night, which we were driving around the parking lot with all crazy. And he was saying that, you know, when you go to McDonald's, it's like a 40-minute ordeal because people stop you and take pictures with the car and do all this crazy stuff. And I was telling him, like, well, it's me going to Pirates of the Caribbean, you know, it's a 40-minute ordeal because the line is 40 minutes. Just kidding. And look at this. Alright, so now he's done taking it forward. Oh. So people with these cars have to be quite stoic and just sort of develop a thick skin of ignoring everyone that wants to look at their vehicle. It's not amazing though. It's pretty awesome. I know I'm being calm and chill. I actually have kind of developed somewhat of a cold here. I don't know if it was Back to the Future night that finally did me in or what, running around here screaming, but awesome style. Adam and I were talking about how we were the only people that night running around here having fun, screaming. But now I'm kind of more in awe. I'm just thinking there's less people, things are way calmer, things are way more normal, better, more fun. This is different. There's a whole different vibe out here tonight. Things have calmed down after Back to the Future Day, and what you have out here are the hardcore fans and the few people left from the We're Going Back event who are pretty hardcore fans. They spent quite a lot of money and quite a lot of time constructing these crazy 30th anniversary events. A lot of them went to the Enchantment Under the Sea dance where they originally had the dance. They went on a filming locations tour. They do all this stuff. So it's the second time, 5 years later, that they did a We're Going Back event, all crazy, for 2015, of course, like in part 2, Back to the Future. Not a big Back to the Future fan. You don't know what any of this means. I would suggest rewatching those movies. The Blu-rays are out now, all crazy. The Flux Capacitor box set, which I still don't have. And but I'm really into the trilogy, the holy trilogy of trilogies, as my friends and I have called it for years, which was the trilogy of trilogies of Star Wars, the original trilogy, Indiana Jones, which used to be a trilogy, and then Back to the Future. And those were the three things, kind of in that order for me: Star Wars, Indiana Jones, Back to the Future. But those are far and away, beyond any other movies, my favorite movies. So Back to the Future, one of my favorite movies of all time. Spent years of my life hunting down the locations from part 2, driving street by street by street in Whittier and all these other places to locate Jennifer's house. Ooh, look at that. Yes, I think this guy is taking off. I think the time machine might be departing, so let's get closer and take a look. How often do you see this? Look at that. You might never see this again. Certainly you're not going to see this on October 26th, 2015 again. There it is, Dr. E. Brown, Enterprises, Scientific Search, 24-hour scientific search. There goes a man with a time machine. Living out his bucket list dream right there. Running from the Libyans, peeling out in the mall. Yes! 38 miles per hour! I love this. This is awesome. Look at this guy. He's going back. He's going back to the future! 2015. Can you believe it? 2015. 30 years. Say it about 30 years. It's a nice round number. Yes. Yes, I love that. What a great effect. That's amazing. So pretty amazing. 30 years after that movie came out. Robert Zemeckis and Bob Gale wrote a little film. Steven Spielberg produced it. And here it is. Back to the Future 30 years later. Damn cold! I love this. I love this. I love all the Back to the Future quoting. All the nerdiness happening. I'm just giving you guys a look.
Don't for that minute to arrive this moment in time.
Alright. There you go. So that's the Haps. We lived it. Let's see. 1:30 a.m. So basically, by now, Marty would have gone back to 1955, and second Marty, because we're in Timeline 2 now, and we're at Lone Pine Mall, would have cruised down the hill to see Doc Brown laying there. What? You're alive? What about all that talk about screwing up future events, etc., etc.? I'm butchering the quotes. Every time I come out here, it's in the middle of the night, tired. It's pretty crazy. So this is cool. So a calmer night than the other night. Not our time machine. This is not our friend's DeLorean in this case, so we're not gonna get to just cruise all around. I don't know where Adam the Woo is. I don't know where anybody is. But for me, I tried to Heimbach my friend George. I went to his work and I was like, come on, bro, play hooky. He's the only guy I knew that was awake. But there we go. Back to the Future, Part 1. So really, this is the real Back to the Future day, because it's not Back to the Future Part 2 day. Not Back to the Future Part 2 day. Not go to 2015 to Future Jaws in 3D, all crazy. No, Jaws 19, I mean. This is it. Back to the Future, October 26th, 1985 at 1:20 a.m. Temporal experiment number 1. Dr. Emmett Brown sent his dog Einstein 1 minute into the future, and then several minutes later, Marty McFly. I really wish I knew. I'm sure I could Google it, but I'd have to use my phone that I'm recording with to Google it. Marty McFly goes back to 1955 and then comes back to the future into Courthouse Square. But then, of course, he runs to the mall and tumbles down that hill. That would have happened on this date in the movie 30 years ago. Right there. Marty McFly cruising and Doc is down here. He watches himself go back in time. He watches the Libyans crash into the Fox photo booth, which would have been right there. And then all that other stuff. So we mentioned this all the other night. Go back a couple of vlogs, and you can see our Back to the Future vlog. Adam and I were running around like crazy. We're playing with DeLorean toys and action figures and screaming our heads off and having a good time out here. But this is the follow-up vlog I wanted you to see. Actual Back to the Future Day, October 26th, 1985, 1 in the morning. There you go. All right. Love you guys. Subscribe for some more crazy adventures from all over the place. Sometimes more crazy than they are now. I'm a little sleepy, I'm a little tired. I didn't have time to build this vlog to scale or to paint it. So I appreciate you guys hanging around. I'm checking out the scene with me. Happy actual Back to the Future Day. I hope you guys get the Back to the Future Blu-rays and watch them and have a great time. And I'll see you guys in the future. Or in the past. Live fast, die poor, .spreadshirt.com. Don't forget it. Also, subscribe. Back to the Future. Let's see if you bastards can do 90.
In 1189, at Chinon in central France, King Henry II was dying. His empire, covering all of England and vast areas of France, was crumbling. What eventually broke the aging king, though, was not the rebellions which threatened his kingdoms, but the discovery that one of the leading rebels was his youngest and favorite son, John.
John was a wonderful calculator, but in the end there was something vicious in him which is always going to come out, always going to smile to your face and stab you in the back.
He was violent, he was cunning, he was witty and fun, but he was also not to be trusted.
Throughout his 17-year reign, the man who would be known forever as Bad King John betrayed those closest to him, persecuted the innocent, and was the first king of England to be accused of murder. Writing after John's death, a medieval chronicler said of him, "He feared not God, nor respected men. His punishments were refinements of cruelty, the starvation of children, the the crushing of old men. His court was a brothel where no woman was safe. John's oppression was so widely felt that the legend of Robin Hood was born, the mythic outlaw of Sherwood Forest, who stole from the rich and gave to the poor.
Exaggerations, I'm sure, but they were effective exaggerations because they were widely believed.
Driven to despair, John's subjects would try to impose a document on him called the Magna Carta, guaranteeing protection of their rights. John's refusal to abide by it would finally drive a desperate people into rebellion.
They couldn't stand him. John makes so many people so fed up, so angry, so ashamed, humiliated, that they choose to rebel. And it's just an awful shit.
John was born in Oxford on Christmas Eve 1167, the fourth and youngest son of King Henry II, the head of the Angevin dynasty, a family of powerful nobles originating in Anjou in central France. Like William the Conqueror 100 years before them, they controlled all of England and vast territories throughout France.
He was born into the most powerful family in Western Europe. His father, King Henry II, was not only King of England, but was also Duke of Normandy, Duke of Aquitaine, which is the whole of southwestern France, Count of Anjou, the rich lands in the Loire Valley, and was on the eve of invading Ireland and subjecting Ireland to his dominion as well.
Henry and his wife, Eleanor of Aquitaine, had three other sons: Geoffrey, Henry the Younger, and Richard, later known as Richard the Lionheart.
As John grew up, that family fell apart, became a classically dysfunctional family.
For John, bad relations with his brothers were exacerbated by the fact that as the youngest son, his claim to any lands and entitlements was always unclear. John was haunted by the fact that his father, King Henry II, gave him the nickname Lackland. To amend this in 1189, Henry gave the 18-year-old John the governorship of Ireland. One of John's castles still stands at Limerick in the Irish Republic. Whilst there, John exhibited one of his most notorious qualities.
Two contemporary commentators comment upon his rapacity and avarice, that he wouldn't pay his soldiers, but seemed very keen to make as much money out of everyone there as he could. So right from the beginning, avarice, greed, is certainly one of the characteristics they pick up. They say they hope he will improve as he gets older, just a lad after all. The real troubles that beset that family were caused largely by his father's love for John and his father's wish to provide for John, a wish which left behind a trail of people who felt themselves to be disinherited in the interests of the youngest son of the family.
Things would never change. Regardless of how much his father tried to help him, John's appetite for power would always outweigh any sense of loyalty to his father.
In the last year or so of his life, Henry was facing great problems from his oldest surviving son, Richard, and the King of France, Philip Augustus, and Henry feared that they might be allying against him.
John wasted no time in joining his brother Richard and the King of France in rebellion against his father.
It was clear that the future lay with Richard, and therefore John, I think, is just looking to where the advantage is. But it does testify to a terrible lack of loyalty to his father. So I think there was just self-interest, calculated the future is with Richard, not with my father.
Contemporaries wrote about this as the final straw that broke the father's heart, that he had gone through so much, he'd made so many mistakes for John's sake, and in the end it was the son he loved who betrayed him.
With Henry's death in 1189, Richard was now the King of England. And though generous to John, John felt no sense of loyalty to his brother.
From the time of the succession to the throne of his surviving older brother, Richard the Lionheart. John was given fantastic wealth, particularly in England, but also in Normandy, and he was also Lord of Ireland. Now, if that wasn't enough for John, it just shows that it would have been impossible to satisfy him.
What they don't really give him is the status of an Angevin prince. And so, from almost as soon as Richard sets off on crusade, we see him trying to cause trouble, or being drawn into the troubles which arise from Richard's absence.
And he in the end took up arms and allied treacherously with the King of France.
To John's astonishment, although Richard had been imprisoned in Germany on his return from the Crusades, he eventually made it back. Worried, John immediately broke off his alliance with the King of France and begged Richard's forgiveness.
John falls on his knees before his older brother. Richard is supposed to say, "Oh, come on, John, get up. You're just a child. You've been badly advised." Well, by that time, he was nearly 30 years old. So not surprisingly, the French now felt they'd been betrayed by John, who had just betrayed Richard, who had betrayed his father.
Amazingly, John still felt entitled to the throne and pressed Richard to be named as his heir.
John's claim would have been completely unassailable had it not been for the fact that from 1189, as his father was dying, through to 1194, when his brother was in prison in Germany, John had a track record of treachery which appalled contemporaries. One of Richard's main concerns was for his reputation, for his honor, that he would do what honor required. John is clearly concerned to remain as rich as possible and as powerful as possible, but that honor, I think, never seems to cross his mind at all.
Reputations notwithstanding, John would secure the throne. Wounded in battle at Chalus in central France, Richard died on April the 6th, 1199. On his deathbed, he named John as his heir.
John is king by the grace of God. The records of his own household show that he didn't observe feast days, he didn't observe fasts, he ate meat on Fridays, he chatted during Mass and everything like that. Once you've met John, it's very difficult any longer to believe this really can be a king by the grace of God, you know, because he's manifestly not a pious man.
As king, John felt himself beyond reproach and free to have whatever he wanted when he wanted it, particularly when it came to women. His first marriage to Isabel of Gloucester in 1189 was annulled when she couldn't produce an heir.
He then kept Isabella of Gloucester in the household or in his castles for the next 10 years. Isabella wasn't permitted to remarry. John wanted to keep her lands, they didn't want to keep her.
In 1200, John decided to marry another Isabel, the French heiress, Isabel of Angoulême. But there was one problem. She was too young to marry.
The chroniclers say, I suspect with a certain tinge of knowing this, that she appeared to be about 12 years old, but Isabella could have been as young as 8 or 9.
A previous betrothal to Hugh de Lusignan, a neighbouring baron, had been postponed because of Isabel's youth.
Hugh de Lusignan postponed the marriage until she should be old enough to marry. Then in comes John and takes her instead, ignoring the fact that she was not regarded as old enough to marry.
He so alienated the local barons that thereafter the writing was on the wall, and from that sprang the rebellions that then swept John's territories from northern France off the map.
John's high-handed attitude to women would also have huge consequences for him in England.
Having mistresses for a king is not lechery, that's just normal. The problem is that John goes after, against their will, the women in the families of the elite of society. He is accused of sexually harassing their wives and daughters. Robert Fitzwalter, for example, said that King John tried to take his daughter by force.
The other was William Longspake. Longspake had loyally gone out for John to fight for him at the Battle of Bouvines. He was captured, and while he was in captivity, John seduced his wife. I mean, all these kings were womanizers, but with John it had political consequences.
Although only 2 years into his reign, John's reputation for treachery, greed and lustfulness was beginning to dominate and destroy the lives of his subjects. But no one could imagine that John would soon go down in history as the first English king to commit murder with his own hands.